Hi again, and welcome to the fourth part of my Excel form series tutorial. In this video, we'll create a data entry form using VBA's UserForm feature. In our previous tutorials, we created worksheet-based forms. They were simple but limited. Those forms didn't include some useful elements like checkboxes, option buttons, list boxes, or combo boxes that we often need in real-world scenarios. With a user form, you can build more advanced and interactive forms, just like the one you're seeing on the screen. Our user form will follow the same layout and fields as our previous worksheet-based form. The only change is that the full-time field will now use a checkbox instead of a drop-down list. All other features, such as adding, finding, and updating records, will remain the same, but this time, we'll manage them using the user form. Let's start creating our first user form. If the Developer tab isn't visible on your Excel ribbon, right-click anywhere on the ribbon and choose Customize the ribbon. From the Excel Options window, check the Developer option and click OK. Now that the Developer tab is visible, click on it and choose Visual Basic to open the VBA editor. In the VBA editor, go to the Insert menu and select User Form. A new form named UserForm 1 will appear in the Project Explorer under the Form section. You'll also see a blank form in design mode on the screen. You can adjust its width and height as needed to fit your form's layout. A toolbox window will also appear. It contains all the form controls you can use, such as labels, text boxes, buttons, and more. To start designing, select any control from the toolbox and draw it on your form. For our form, we'll begin by adding labels. These are used to display text or field names beside each input box, so users know what information to enter. When you double-click on any item on the form, Excel automatically creates an event procedure for that specific control and opens the code window. For example, when we double-click on the label, VBA creates a private subroutine that looks like this. Here, label 1 is the name of the control, and click is the event associated with it. Any code you write inside this subroutine will run when a user clicks on that label while using the form. For now, let's delete this code, as we'll discuss events later. To return to design mode, simply double-click UserForm 1 in the Project Explorer. Now, let's talk about the Properties window. You can use it to modify an element's name, caption, color, font, and many other settings. The name property is used in your VBA code to identify that element. For example, we'll change the label's name from Label 1 to Name Label. The caption property is what's actually shown to users on the form. So, we'll update it to Display Name instead of the default text. Next, we'll go to the Font property and click the three dots on the right. This opens the Font dialog box, where you can customize the element's font type, style, and size. We'll select Bold and set the font size to 11. We'll use font size 11 consistently for all the elements in our form to keep the design clean and uniform. Next, we'll copy the formatted label and paste it to create another one. Then, we'll update its name and caption properties. We don't need to change the font size or style again, because those settings are already applied when we copied the original label. Our form will have a total of 4 labels, since it includes 4 fields: 1 for the employee's name, 1 for the department, 1 for the joining date, and 1 for full-time status to indicate the job type. So, we'll simply paste 3 more labels and then modify their names and captions accordingly. Next, we'll insert the input fields for our form. First, let's add a text box control. A text box is used to allow users to type in text, numbers, or any kind of input directly into the form. In the Properties window, set its name to Name field, and under the Font property, click the 3 dots and change the font size to 11, as shown on the screen. Once the formatting is complete, copy this text box and paste it to create another one for the joining date input. Rename this second text box to Date field. Now we have 2 text boxes on our form. For the third input, Department, we'll use a combo box. A combo box is a drop-down menu that lets users choose a value from a predefined list, while still allowing manual entry if needed. Just like the text box, rename it to Department field and set its font size to 11. For the last input, we'll insert a checkbox. A checkbox allows users to select a true or false value. In this case, whether the employee works full-time or not. Rename the checkbox to full-time field and change its caption to yes, so that when the job type is full-time, the box can be checked to indicate yes. Again, adjust its font size to 11. Finally, use the Properties window to fine-tune the size, height, and width of each form element to make the layout neat and visually balanced. Next, we'll insert a command button at the bottom of all the input fields. A command button is used to trigger actions, for example, adding, saving, or updating data when clicked. Rename this button to Submit button, set its font size to 11, and change its caption to Add Record. This button will be used to insert or update a record in the predefined worksheet table. Clicking this button means the user has finished entering data and wants to save it to the workbook. Now, select the form and click the Run button to test how the form looks. The form will appear in Excel. At this point, entering data and clicking the button won't actually save anything because we haven't yet written any VBA code to define what happens when the Add Record button is clicked. You'll also notice that the combo box for the department field is empty. Clicking the drop-down arrow shows no options yet. Close the form to return to the VBA editor. The form will now be in design mode again. You'll see the title bar of the form currently shows UserForm 1. Let's change that to something more meaningful. Select the form, and in the Properties window, change its caption to Add Record. Now the form's title bar displays Add Record at the top. Next, we want the combo box to automatically display the list of department names when the form opens. We'll do this using VBA code. Double-click anywhere on the form to open the code window for the user form, or right-click the form and choose View Code. If there's any previously inserted code from earlier double-clicks, delete it. Then, in the code window, use the first drop-down at the top to select User Form, and from the second drop-down, select Initialize. This will insert an event procedure that runs automatically when the form is initialized, meaning when it's first displayed on the screen. Now, inside this subroutine, type the code as shown on the screen. Me refers to the current user form. Department field is the name of our combo box control. List is the property that defines the items shown in that combo box. Array creates a list of values that appear as drop-down options. So when the form opens, the combo box will automatically show these department names in its list. Now, let's run our form again to see how the combo box looks this time. You can see that the department list we added in the Initialize event procedure has now successfully loaded into the combo box. At this point, let's save our workbook. Make sure to choose the Excel macro-enabled workbook format. That's the file type with the .xlsm extension, so that all of our VBA code is saved along with the workbook. Before we move further, let's set up the worksheet where our form data will be stored. We'll enter the data in Sheet 1. Column A will store the employee's name. Column B will store the department. Column C will store the joining date. And column D will store the employee's job type. We'll use yes for full-time employees and no for any other type. Now, let's format the headings as shown on the screen. This sheet will be the destination where all data entered through the form will be saved. Now, let's go back to the VBA editor. Right-click on the Add Record button or simply double-click it. This action takes you to the code window, where VBA automatically creates a click event procedure for that button, as seen on the screen. Here, Submit button is the name we assign to the button in the Properties window, and click is the event associated with it. This means that any code you write inside this subroutine will run automatically whenever the Add Record button is clicked. Remember, Add Record is just the caption of our Submit button control. Next, we'll declare a variable named nextRow as a long data type. This variable helps us locate the next empty row in our worksheet. That's where we'll place the new record entered through the form. The code first identifies the very last cell in column, then moves upward until it finds the last filled cell. After that, It adds one to the row property to get the next available row, ready to store our new data. Next, we'll write the code that takes the values entered in our form and places them into the next empty row of sheet 1. The next line you see on the screen reads the value from the name field text box in the form and places it into column A at the row number stored in the next row variable. This line does the same for the department drop-down box, named Department Combo, and places it into column B. And this line takes the date from the date field text box and puts it into column C. Finally, we read the last form field, the checkbox. The value of a checkbox is either true if it's checked or false if it's not. But instead of writing true or false in the worksheet, we want to display something more readable, like yes or no for the full-time column. To do that, we slightly modify the code too. The IIF function checks the value of the checkbox. If it's true, it writes yes, and if it's false, it writes no. That makes the worksheet data much easier to understand. But before we use the IIF function, let's first try it without it, so you can see how the raw true or false values appear in the sheet. At the end of the subroutine, we add one more line to confirm that the record has been successfully saved. This line displays a simple message box with the text, "Record submitted." Now, let's run the form and enter a sample record to test how it works. You'll see that the form is working perfectly, inserting the data into the worksheet exactly as expected. However, in the full-time column, you'll notice the value true instead of yes. That's because checkboxes return true when checked and false when unchecked. Let's go back to the form's code and use the IIF function to return a custom value. Yes if the checkbox is checked, or no if it's not. Now, when we run the form again and submit a new record, you'll see yes or no in the full-time column instead of true or false. After submitting the form, you'll notice that the form fields don't automatically clear. The data saved in the worksheet still remains visible in the form. Let's go back to the VBA editor and open the form's code window. At the end of the Submit button _click subroutine, we'll assign blank values to each of the form's input fields, as shown on the screen. Now, when we run the form again and submit a record, you'll see that all the text boxes and the combo box are cleared. But the checkbox doesn't reset completely. Instead, it appears grayed out with a shaded check mark. That happens because assigning a blank value doesn't actually clear a checkbox. It leaves it in an indeterminate state. To fix this, go back to the form's code window again, and instead of assigning a blank value, set the checkbox's value to false. This tells VBA to uncheck it completely. Now run the form once more, submit a record, and you'll see that the form is fully cleared, including the checkbox. Now, the first stage of our form is complete. It can successfully add new records to the worksheet. Let's move on and add a find feature to our form. To do this, we'll first insert another text box and a new button onto the form. The text box will be used to enter the employee name we want to search for. And clicking the button will run the VBA code that looks for that name in the worksheet. We've named the button Find Button and set its caption to Find. For the text box, we've named it FindBox. We also added a label with the caption Employee Name to indicate that the search will be performed by the employee's name. Next, let's adjust the width, height, and position of these newly added elements and format their font and size to match the rest of the form. Next, double-click the Find button. This will open its click event subroutine. Any code we write here will run automatically whenever the Find button is clicked. First, we declare a variable named empname as a string type and assign it the value entered in the FindBox text field. Next, we check whether the Find box is empty, meaning the user clicked the Find button without typing anything. If there's no value, we simply exit the subroutine because there's nothing to search for. After that, we declare another variable named FindCell as a range type. we'll use it to store the result returned by the find function. The find function searches for the value stored in EMP name within column A of sheet 1. Here, the part what is a parameter of the find function. It specifies the value we want to search for in column A. Next, we use an if condition to check whether the find function found a match. If find cell is nothing, that means no record was found. So we display a message box to inform the user and then exit the subroutine. If the record is found, the code continues to run, and we use the form fields to display the record details inside the form. This line displays the employee's name in the name field of the form. Here's how it works. Find cell, that row gives us the row number where the employee was found. Then, cell's property locates a specific cell. In this case, column 1, which is column A. Finally, the value property returns the data stored in that cell. Next, we do the same for the other fields. These lines fill the department and joining date fields in the form using the values from columns B and C of the found row. In the cell's property, we usually use numbers to refer to columns. For example, 1 for column A, 2 for column B, and so on. But to make our code easier to read and understand, we can also use the actual column letters instead of numbers. Using column letters is often clearer, especially when you have several columns in your code and want to quickly recognize which data is going where. The full-time field, which is our checkbox control, expects a true or false value. However, the data in column D is stored as yes or no, so we need to make a small adjustment to convert those values properly. To handle this, we'll use the same IIF function we used earlier, but this time in reverse. Instead of converting true or false into yes or no, we'll convert yes or no into true or false, as shown on the screen. This code checks the value in column D of the found record. If the value is yes, it returns true, causing the checkbox to appear checked. If it's no, it returns false, leaving the checkbox unchecked. Now let's test it. Run the code and try finding a record. You'll see the record is found and successfully loaded into the form. Notice the checkbox is not checked because the value in the cell was not yes. If it had been yes, the checkbox would have been checked. Since we have only a few records, let's add some sample data to demonstrate how the form works. I already have some data from our previous worksheet form tutorial. Let's just paste it into the sheet. Now, when we run the form again and search the records, you'll see it's working perfectly, loading records and checking the box for those with yes in the full-time field. At this point, our form returns only the first occurrence of the found record. If the same name exists in another row, the form won't move there after finding the first one. That's because our code in the find button _click subroutine always starts searching from the top of column A. Even when we click again, it starts over, so it never finds the next matching record. To fix this, we'll make our search feature continue after the previous record instead of restarting from the beginning. To do that, we first need to save the position of the found record somewhere, then use that position in our code to search after it. Fortunately, VBA's find function allows us to search after a specific cell. So if we save the location of the last found record, clicking the Find button again will read that save position and search from there. In the VBA editor, let's create a text box to store the row number of the found record. We'll name it Hidden Field in the Properties window and assign it the default value 1. As the name suggests, we'll hide this text box later since it's only for internal use. No user interaction is required. For now, let's keep it visible so we can see if it's working correctly. Now, double-click the Find button to edit the code in its click event. First, declare a variable named searchAfter as a range, and assign it like this as shown on screen. This tells VBA to create a range object pointing to the cell in column A that matches the row number stored in the hidden field. Next, modify the find line that performs the search as shown on the screen. This change tells VBA to begin searching after the cell stored in searchAfter, instead of starting from the top each time. When we search for a record, the hidden field initially has the value 1, so the search begins from row 1. If the record is found, we'll then save its row number into the hidden field. That way, the next time we click Find, it starts searching from that row onward instead of starting over. To do that, we'll store the row number from the Find Cell variable, which currently holds the cell of the found record, by using the FindCell.row property, as shown on the screen. Now, after each search, the location of the found record is saved in the hidden field, ready for the next search. Now let's run the code. When we search for a record, you'll see its row number appears in the hidden field. Click Find again. If another matching record exists, the new row number will appear. And if there's no next match, the Find function automatically wraps around and starts from the first row again, which is why you'll see the same row number once it loops back. Now, the second stage, finding records, of our form is completed. At this point, our form can both add and find records. The third and final stage of this video is to update the found or existing record. Currently, if we search for a record, make changes to in the form, and then click the Submit button, which is labeled Add Record, it will insert a new record instead of updating the existing one. To fix this, close the form and go to the Find button _ click subroutine. Here, we'll simply rename the caption of the Add Record button to Update Record. This doesn't make the code update the record yet. It just informs the user what the button is currently meant to do, whether it's adding a new record or updating an existing one. Next, open the Submit button _ click procedure. This is where the actual update logic will be handled. Here's the idea. We'll check the caption of the button. If it says Add Record, the code will insert a new record at the end of the list in Sheet 1. But if the caption says Update Record, the code will update the existing record instead by reading its row location from the hidden field. We'll do this using a simple if statement. If the button's caption equals Update Record, we assign the hidden field value to the next row variable. Remember, next row determines the row number where data should be written. Otherwise, if the caption is not Update Record, we use the regular code that finds the next empty row in the sheet for inserting a new record. Finally, after saving the data, we rename the button caption back to Add Record. With these small changes, using an if statement and dynamically changing the button caption, our form can now both add and update records with minimal effort. Now run the code, try finding and updating a few records. You'll see everything is working perfectly. The form now updates existing records smoothly, just as intended. Next, let's hide the hidden field control, which we use to store the row number of the found record. Select the hidden field in the form, then go to the Properties window. Scroll down to the Visible property and set it to False. Now, select the form and click the Run button. You'll notice that the form appears in Excel, and the hidden field is no longer visible, but it still exists and works silently in the background. Try searching for a record. You'll see that it still finds matching results even though the hidden field is hidden. Next, close the form again, and in the VBA editor, insert a new button on the form. Name this button Clear Fields, and change its caption to Clear Form. Now, double-click the button to open its click event procedure. This is where we'll write the code to define what happens when this button is clicked. We'll use this button to clear all form fields, including the hidden field. This gives us a quick way to reset the entire form with a single click, instead of clearing each field manually. In the code, we'll assign a blank value to all text boxes and combo boxes to remove any existing data. For the checkbox, we'll set its value to false so that it appears unchecked. For the hidden field, we'll set its value to 1 so that VBA starts searching after the first row. Finally, we'll add one more line to reset the Submit button caption back to its default Add Record. This ensures that if the form was in the Update Record mode, it switches back to the default Add Record state. Now, run the form and test it again. Try entering data, searching for records, and updating existing ones. Everything should be working smoothly. The Clear Form button will instantly reset your form, ready for a fresh new entry. Now our form is fully functional, but currently, it can only be run from the VBA editor, which isn't very convenient for everyday use. In this final step, we'll make it accessible directly from the worksheet by adding a button. Go to the Developer tab, and from the Insert menu, select Button under the Form control as shown on the screen. Draw the button anywhere on the sheet, and the Assign Macro dialog box will appear. Click New, and the VBA editor will open with a blank code window in Module 1. In this code window, write the macro as shown on the screen. The UserForm1.show command displays our form named UserForm1. Now, go back to Excel, right-click the button, and rename it to Show Form. From now on, whenever you click this button, your form will appear instantly. No need to open the VBA editor. This makes your form user-friendly and ready to use. Thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful in learning how to create a fully functional user form in Excel using VBA that can add new records, find existing ones, and update them easily. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Excel and VBA tutorials. See you in the next video.